manifest was wrong. It had been wrong since the day Deka first opened it. A cargo log formatted in combined freight notation, 663 entries organized by the only categories the combine cared about: species, acquisition point, commercial classification, projected yield. She had used it anyway because it was the only head count she had, and in those first frantic days aboard the Arveth, knowing how many mouths needed feeding mattered more than what the document called them. 20 days later, crouched at the secondary engineering console she had claimed as her own, Deka stared at the headers and felt the slow burn of something she had been too busy to feel before. Projected yield. She'd seen documents like this in Mogadishu. The combine had a sharper gift for reducing people to freight metrics, but the shape was the same: displacement reports, refugee tallies. A human being became a line item, the line item became a budget allocation, and the budget allocation became a decision made by someone who had never met the human being and never would. She knew the shape of this. She'd worked inside it. She also knew what happened when you let it stand. Deka closed the cargo log, opened a new file. The Arva systems accepted the input with the same indifferent hum they gave everything. The ship did not care what its crew wrote, only that someone was writing. She set her cursor at the top of the blank document and typed to the first header: name, given or preferred. The cursor blinked. She typed the second: species. Third: ERA of origin. Fourth: languages, spoken. Fifth: skills, identified. She paused on the sixth. The combine's manifest had a header: commercial classification. She spent 30 seconds deciding what to put in its place. She put skills, self-reported. The difference between those two headers was the entire argument. The manifest was one of several things that needed doing today. Today was departure day, and departure day meant Deka was operating on 4 tracks simultaneously. The way she had learned to in Mogadishu, crises did not have the courtesy to arrive one at a time. Track 1, navigation data. Vest's intelligence package sat on a separate partition Deka had isolated from the Arvis main systems, because she trusted the Covenant operative approximately as far as Sevahil could throw him, and Sevahil could throw most things an impressive distance, but probably not a man who moved without ships. The Tata was clean as far as she could tell. Combined frontier route maps, patrol frequencies, the harvest operation scheduled in 40 days, 1 vessel, a cargo count that suggested a recently taken group, not yet processed, not yet broken down into projected yield. She cross-referenced Veth's routes against Pakla's charts, where Pakla's hand-annotated star patterns matched Veth's data. Deka flagged the route segments green, where they diverged amber, where they contradicted red. The result was a navigation corridor that looked like a bruise: green at the center, amber at the edges, red in the gaps. Pakla would want to walk it herself before they committed. Good. Deka wanted her to walk it. Track 2, food synthesis. The Arvith was taking on new crew, 4 additional Ikran, bringing the total to 7. 2 members of a species Aisha had made contact with during the outpost stay, whose metabolic profiles Deka did not yet have. And 1 figure she had not expected: the child from the plaza. The one who had approached Higo on the night Sale told them about the transplanting. The child's guardian had decided the Arveth was where the child should go next. Sale had neither encouraged nor prevented this, which was Sale's way of saying everything by saying nothing. Disha pulled up the synthesis matrix. 41 of 47 parameters active, output at 105% baseline. She had headroom. The Ikran metabolic profiles she could estimate from the 3 already aboard. The Vesa eldest had been meticulous about communicating dietary needs through Ayesha's pigeon, and the data extrapolated well. The 2 new species members were a different problem. Aisha had sent her a set of notes in the mixed notation system they had developed, half combine operational vocabulary, half improvised shorthand. Deka parsed them, built provisional synthesis profiles, flagged them for adjustment after the first 48 hours of observed intake. The child was the simplest problem and the strangest, a human child, raised at a keeper outpost for an indeterminate number of years, eating food that had been grown in soil that predated the combine's existence. Deka set the child's synthesis profile to standard human baseline and annotated it, adjust per observation. Esisha, track 3, head count. She went through the cargo manifest one final time, the combine's manifest, the old one, the wrong one, 663 entries when she had first opened it, 63 freed captives, and approximately 600 in the original cargo holds. Since then, the captain was departing, reducing the combine personnel to the slaver alone. 4 Ikran joining, 2 new species crew, 1 child. She ran the numbers, updated the total, and then, for the last time, closed the combine's file. She would not open it again. Track 4, the manifest. Deka started with herself, name given or preferred, Deka, species human, transplant stock, ERA of origin 2019 CE Gregorian, languages spoken Somali, English, Arabic, conversational, combine operational, functional, skills identified, systems analysis, electrical engineering, field medicine, crisis logistics, food synthesis programming, navigation mathematics, first contact protocol development. The skills Mona self-reported, generator repair, keeping people fed, asking the next question when the current answer is insufficient. She looked at it. The self-reported column was shorter than the identified column. That felt right. The things you claimed about yourself should weigh less than the things others saw you do. She saved the entry and went to find the crew. Sevhil was in the forward cargo hold, doing something to a bulkhead panel that involved sustained force and what Deka had come to recognize as his working expression, jaw set, eyes focused at a point approximately 3 centimeters behind whatever he was looking at, as though he could see the stress grain inside the material. Which, given his track record with combine composites, maybe he could. "I'm building a crew manifest," Deka said. She had learned to open conversations with Sevhal by stating what she was doing. He responded to function. "I need your entry." Sevhal looked up. His hands did not stop working the panel. "What goes in it? Name, species, where you're from, when you're from, what languages you speak, what you're good at, what I've seen, and what you say." The big Norseman considered this for approximately 2 seconds, which was longer than he gave most things. "Skills," he said. "Skills." He wiped his hands on his thighs, the gesture of a man accustomed to grease and salt water and the residue of work. "Raid coordination," he said. "Ship navigation, coastal, long sea, knot work, ice travel, open water endurance, close combat, several weapons, livestock assessment, some carpentry, reading weather, reading men." The Deka typed. She got through livestock assessment and paused. "Reading men." Sevahil's mouth twitched toward a smile. "You read machines, I read people. Whether a man will hold a line, whether he'll run, where the weak joint is in a crew before the crew knows it has one." He shrugged, the motion of a man who had been doing this since he was old enough to pull an oar. "Useful on a ship. Oh, useful on a ship." Deka agreed. She typed "reading men" in the self-reported column, and the entry was the longest on the manifest so far, and none of it was frivolous. Quintus gave his entry with Roman precision. Name, rank, former, languages, Latin, Camp Greek, operational combine, functional crew pigeon, skills, unit organization, defensive planning, logistics, morale discipline, long march endurance. When Deka asked for self-reported skills, he paused, the first time she had seen him pause for a personal question. "Command," he said finally, "not the planning, the other thing, the part where you must decide and the decision will cost someone." Deka typed it. The cursor blinked. She did not ask him to elaborate. Hattori's entry was the most carefully worded. He dictated it through Aisha, not because he could not communicate directly, but because he wanted the nuance preserved. His skills identified column included intelligence analysis, pattern recognition in hierarchical systems, behavioral camouflage, silent movement, close quarters neutralization. His self-reported column was a single line, the question that changes the terms of the negotiation. Pakla stood by the navigation console and gave her entry without looking at Deka. She spoke to the star charts while she spoke, her fingers tracing the route segments Deka had flagged. Tracking, terrain reading, any terrain including this one. A gesture at the void outside the hull. Horse management, but there are no horses. Long distance travel under pursuit. Finding water. She paused, knowing when the ground is about to change before it changes. Deka typed it all. Alcala never turned around, and neither of them pretended this was anything less than what it was, a woman defining herself in the absence of the land that had defined her. Aishi's entry took longer because Aishi kept trying to translate other people's contributions more precisely instead of giving her own. Deka had to ask 3 times. Finally, Aisha sat across from her and spoke in the register she used when she was being honest rather than diplomatic. Languages. Romani, Turkish, Greek, Bulgarian, combine operational and formal, Ikrin Pidgin, partial Vetsa vocalization, medical care, wound treatment, herbal pharmacology from a tradition that does not exist here but the principles carry. Translation, mediation. She stopped. Reading a room before the room knows it needs reading. Self-reported. Anisha's expression shifted. Guarded warmth. The one Deka had come to understand was her real face, the one under the diplomatic mask, keeping people talking to each other when they want to stop. Tigo was sitting cross-legged in the corridor outside the bridge, which was where he sat when he was thinking. Deka lowered herself to the deck beside him and explained the manifest. He listened with his characteristic stillness, the focused attention of a man for whom listening was a tactical act. Era of origin, he said. When you're from, the calendar year. Tigo's eyes moved to a point in the middle distance. My people did not count years the way your calendar counts them. We counted the movements of the world, the sun, the completion of a cycle. Deka waited. She had learned that Tigo's pauses were the space he made for the right words to arrive. I was taken in the year 1 read, he said. In your counting, I am told it is 1487, but era of origin asks me to define when I am from by a system that is not mine. He looked at her. Put the year your calendar gives. Then put age of the 5th sun, the era of movement. Both are true. The manifest should hold both. Deka typed it, ERI of origin, 1487 CE Gregorian, age of the 5th sun, Nahui Olin, the era of movement. When she looked up, Tigo was watching her with an expression she could not read. Skills, we said. Combat, he said. Ritual and tactical, they are the same thing, if the ritual is honest. Observation, endurance past the point where the body says to stop. Knowledge of astronomy, practical, not decorative. The discipline of offering what you have without negotiating the price. She typed it, and the last line sat on the screen like a philosophy disguised as a skill, and she left it. The child was last. Deka found them in the settlement plaza, standing near the fire pit where the deliberation had happened 2 nights ago. The ashes were cold. The child was watching a group of Ikrin load supplies onto a pallet with the focused attention of someone memorizing a process. Aisha stood beside Deka, ready to translate. What do you know how to do? Deka asked. The child turned, looked at Deka with eyes that were entirely human and entirely unreadable. Then the child did something Deka had seen twice before, once when the child approached Tigo, once in passing on the settlement's paths. Though the child's mouth formed words in what might have been archaic Ikrin, or something older, and simultaneously something moved in the space between them, a pressure, a shape, a communication on the 3rd channel that Deka could feel against her skin but could not parse. It tilted her head, listened with her whole body. After a moment, she spoke. The child says, growing things, finding things that are lost, listening to what is underneath. Deka typed it into the manifest exactly as given. Name, the child had offered a name through Ishi, a sound that Deka rendered phonetically as Kel. Species, human, keeper outpost, frontier raised, ERA of origin, unknown, born at the outpost, languages, archaic Ikran, third channel partial, skills, self-reported, growing things, finding things that are lost, listening to what is underneath. The entry looks strange next to the others, a child's self-knowledge against the accumulated expertise of warriors and survivors and engineers. But it was the only entry on the manifest where the self-reported column held everything and the identified column was blank, and Deka realized with a jolt that this was the purest form of the document's argument. The child had agreed to be seen. No one had assessed the child first. The manifest took 3 hours. It filled 4 screens. Every person aboard the Arveth who could be reached through direct conversation, through Ashay's translation, through the Ikran pidgin, through the halting gestural exchanges Deka had learned to conduct with the 2 new species crew, had an entry. The entries varied in length, from Savel's exhaustive accounting to entries that held only a name and a single skill offered through 2 layers of translation by someone who had been cargo 12 hours ago and had never been asked what they were good at. Deka printed it. The Arvith's fabrication systems could produce physical documents, a capability she had never used because until now there had been nothing worth committing to a form that could be held. The printer hummed. The sheets emerged warm. She held them and felt their weight, which was negligible, and their significance, which was immense. Sullaz was in the plaza. She stood where she always stood, near the center, where the sight lines converged, where you could see the settlement's paths radiating outward, and the sky above and the ground below simultaneously. The light was the outpost's perpetual gold, the color of a sun that behaved like a sun but was, Deka suspected, something else entirely. Deka approached with a printed manifest in her hands. Aisha walked at her left shoulder. Sal watched them come. Her face held the expression Deka had learned to recognize as attention, older than warmth or coldness. The attention of a woman whose lineage predated every civilization that had produced the people now aboard a stolen ship in her sky. Deka held out the manifest. Sayal took it. She read it the way Deka had seen her read everything, slowly, with a stillness that made the air around her heavier. She turned each page. Her eyes moved across the names, the eras, the skills. She paused on Tigo's entry. She paused on the child's. The silence stretched. The plaza's ambient sounds, distant voices, the rustle of settlement activity, the hum that might have been wind or might have been something else, filled the space around 2 women standing over a document. Then Sale spoke. Her words moved through Aisha's translation like water through stone, shaped by the channel but carrying their own force. The Combine's manifest was what it thought you were. This one is what you are. Deka looked at the manifest in Sale's hands. The pages, the headers, the names, mine. Yes, she said. Sayo handed it back. Her fingers lingered on the edge of the last page for a fraction of a second, a contact so brief Deka almost missed it. Then the manifest was in Deka's hands again, and Sayo stepped back, and the moment closed like a door that had been opened just long enough. Then Sale walked away toward the interior of the settlement and did not look back. The captain walked off the Arveth for the last time in the middle afternoon. Deka watched from the cargo ramp. Quintus stood at the foot of it in what she recognized, after 20 days of proximity, as his formal posture, feet at shoulder width, spine straight, chin level, hands at his sides. The iron ring on his finger caught the outpost's golden light. The captain descended the ramp with the gait of a being who had walked the ship's corridors for 41 years and knew the precise distance between every surface. He carried nothing. He had requested nothing to take. The outpost would provide, or it wouldn't, and either way he was no longer aboard a vessel that had stopped being his the moment Seville's fist found the cell wall's stress grain. Quintus did not thank him. He did not apologize. Instead, he did something Deka had never seen, a short, precise gesture that began at his chest and ended at his hip, accompanied by 3 words in Latin that she caught only fragments of. A Roman military ceremony, the formal end of an attached service, acknowledgement that a period of mutual obligation had concluded. The captain watched this without understanding it. His segmented eyes, the kaleidoscope facets that Deka had learned to read for mood, though she was never certain she was reading correctly, held steady on Quintus's face. He understood its quality. He nodded once. The motion was small and alien and entirely recognizable. Then he turned and walked toward the settlement, his triple-jointed legs finding the outpost's paths with the same precision they had found the ship's corridors, and he did not look back. Winty Sauvage, him go mess, until advanced the first line of structures, and then Quintus turned and climbed the ramp, and his face held nothing that Deka could name, and she did not ask. The slaver was in the aft maintenance bay when the cargo ramp sealed. Though Deka knew because she had checked his location on the internal sensors, a habit she had developed in the first week and would not be giving up. He was performing repairs on the secondary atmospheric processor, which had developed a harmonic whine 3 days ago, that the slaver had diagnosed as a cascade fault in the pressure equalization system. He was staying. He had not been given the option of leaving. Deka noted his continued presence in the manifest. Name, species, combine, unspecified. ERA of origin N/A. Languages, combine, formal and operational. Limited crew pigeon. Skills identified. Ship systems repair. Cargo management. Xenobiological assessment. Skills, self-reported. The slaver had not been asked. The self-reported column was blank, and was the only blank entry in the document. Deka left it that way. Consent was the architecture, and the slaver had not consented to be here. When he did, if he did, the column would fill. The Arveth's engine cycled to departure frequency at hours 16. Deka stood at the nav display. Behind her, the bridge was full. The word mattered. When she had first stood here, in the early hours after the breakout, the bridge had been a stolen room full of people who did not know what any of the surfaces did. The sound had been uncertain, breaths held, movements tentative, the ambient hum of a ship that knew its operators were unqualified. Now Pakla stood at the navigation console, her hands resting on the interface with the easy familiarity of someone who had made this space her terrain. The star charts beneath her fingers were annotated in 3 notations: combined cartographic, Pakla's own observational marks, and Veth's intelligence overlay, which Deka had color-coded green, amber, red. Hattori occupied the communication station. He had learned its architecture the way he learned everything, by watching it, by mapping its patterns, by understanding what it wanted before he asked it for anything. The station's displays showed the Arvith broadcast profile, independent trader, absent from any combine database, a ship that did not exist in the bureaucracy's records. Seville held his position at the tactical display, a station the combine had designed for monitoring cargo compliance, and which Seville had repurposed for threat assessment, with the blunt intuition of a man who had survived by reading the sea for danger. And no vis sales, self-reported, reading weather, reading men, both applied here. Tigo stood at the bridge's perimeter watching. His role in the bridge rotation was observation, the overhead view, the pattern that no one at a console could see because they were inside it. He had called it the Eagle's position through Usha's translation, and no one had questioned it, because Tigo's capacity to see what was actually happening had been proven too many times to argue with. Aisha was between stations, which was where she belonged, the connective tissue, the translator, the one who heard what each person said and what they meant, and negotiated the distance between the two. The Ikaran eldest stood near her, communicating in the 3-channel mode that Deka could feel on her skin but could not decode. Behind them, two of the new Ikrin crew occupied positions at secondary consoles, their triple-jointed fingers moving with increasing confidence across interfaces that had been built by their captors and were now, improbably, theirs. Quintus stood at the command position. His iron ring caught the console light. He did not speak, he waited. Deka looked at the nav display. The chart showed the frontier route, Veth's intelligence, Pakla's annotations, the 40-day window, the harvest operation, one combine vessel, a cargo count that suggested people who had been recently taken and not yet broken down into projected yield. The third version of this image. The first time she had stood here, the galaxy had been an incomprehensible map of a place she did not know, full of symbols she could not read, aboard a ship she did not understand, surrounded by people she could not speak to. She had been afraid. The second time she had annotated the chart herself. Pakla's routes, the Ikrin intelligence, the avoided cluster that turned out to hold the settlement below. The galaxy had become a place with paths, and the paths had been partly hers. She had been less afraid and more angry. Now the chart was annotated in 6 hands. The bridge held a crew at every station. The heading was toward a specific place, at a specific time, for a specific reason, chosen by a group of people who had sat around the fire and voted. The Combine doesn't have a file on the Arvith, Deka thought. It does not have files on any of the people on this ship. We have been free of that database for 30 days. I am building a different database. The difference is, everyone on this ship agreed to be in mine. Set course, Quintus said. Deka's fingers found the nav display. The heading locked. The outpost fell away below them, gold and green and impossible, growing smaller in the external display until it was a point of warm light in the black, and then a memory, and then a place they had been and would carry. The Arvith climbed. The frontier opened ahead of them, unmapped except where they had mapped it, dangerous and chosen. On the secondary screen at Deka's left elbow, the manifest glowed. 671 entries, names, languages, skills given and claimed. The Combine's cargo log was closed and would not be reopened. In its place, a document. There was an argument, written in data, that the people inside it were people, and that someone had asked them, and that they had answered. The stars ahead were the Combine stars. For now, the Arveth went to meet them.